Hello and welcome. My guest today, Marc Ross, who's an attorney with Sakinzia Ross Friedman and Ference, a law firm here in New York City. And we're going to be talking today about the cannabis industry. Very interesting industry. It's controversial, it's exciting, it's got all these elements of an early industry, and you are an expert in this, an attorney expert in this. So I guess let's start with an overview of where is the industry right now?
The industry is changing, there's no question about that. By everybody's estimation, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. The question is, how does it get to the next level? Right now, it is legal in 24 states, but it's illegal federally. Okay. So how do the states and the federal government reconcile those tensions? And I think we're seeing it play out in the courts, in the legislation, and in the public policy and the public minds, where people are going to vote to make it legal in the states, and you have some bills that are being introduced into the federal Congress to see if they can help push that along as well.
In some states it's recreational, some states it's medicinal, some states it's both. So there's that's got to be kind of sorted out too, right?
Right, and right now a majority of the states have it for medical marijuana. And however, the trick on that is it still is marijuana, whether it's medical or recreational. And as a result, it still is violative of federal law because it's a Schedule I drug. So that needs to be reconciled with.
Are there any indications the federal government's going to do anything, take any action on this anytime soon?
We have so much indecision and inability to make decisions on the federal level. I'm not sure I would expect to see any dispositive resolution of this controversial issue in the near future on the federal level.
And there's so many other things. I mean, there's, welfare and environmental issues and terrorism, and I mean, does it just get pushed aside?
Well, it does, and it's not so bad on some level that it gets pushed aside because the states are still able to make their own decisions. So you have the states that have decided to make it legal, most of them medical, some of them recreational. You have a half a dozen or so states that have referendums coming on in this November as well to make it legal in their state.
Okay, so I know Nevada is one of those states that's considering it in November. California too, right?
Yes.
So if California adopts this, approves this, I mean that's going to be major in a national law at some point, I would think.
I'm on record as saying that basically marijuana is much like a marriage, ready or not, here it comes. So eventually you have 24 states today, you'll have 30 states soon, 35 states at some point. The tipping point will be so far that the federal government will have to come along, whether it's reluctant or otherwise.
Okay, and until that happens, we still see banking an issue in the industry. I remember reading a story about the IRS was looking into cash payments in Colorado, trying to figure that out. So everything's done cash, right, in this industry?
Most of it is done cash in the industry, and fundamentally because it is illegal federally. You had the federal government that came out with guidelines 2 years ago that said that under certain circumstances you can bank marijuana revenues. However, it's difficult to do that because the banks aren't sure what that all means and how much compliance is required for that. So while you have the federal government, the executive branch has issued orders for guidelines on how it can act, you're still set up with the paradigm where it is illegal, and the courts have turned around and said, since it's illegal, I really can't turn a blind eye to it, even though the executive branch has in enacting some of these rules. I, the court, can't turn the blind eye to it, so I can't help you, I'm sorry.
Wow, so that sounds like a big headache.
It's a giant headache, and candidly, the controversy and the terrible part of it is you have so much cash on these premises, and you have businesses at risk. Recently, there was one of the people at the dispensaries in Colorado was shot. And the problem you have there is when you have the cash, it's an easy prey, people are nervous, they can't deposit the cash into the banks in a lot of instances. It just makes a dangerous social situation.
Well, interesting, because I didn't even think about that element of it all. So I'm sure insurance then is an issue too.
Insurance is an issue, and then you have the issue about, is it an insurable interest? If it is, something taboo meaning illegal as well, can you insure against it? There's some recent case law saying yes, you can insure against it. So in states, it's a property. So in states where it's legal, you can call the police. If someone takes your plant, which is medical based, and someone steals it from you, you can call the police. And I've heard instances where the police have gone out and recovered someone's marijuana plant and brought it back to them.
Okay. Now, if the federal government does approve this as a law, is all that taken care of, or is this still an issue for a while?
Well, it's funny because I'm fond of saying be careful what you wish for, because everybody hopes, or a lot of people are advocating for it to go to a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2. Once it becomes a Schedule 2, then it takes it off of the taboo topic like LSD and heroin, and then puts it on the schedule along with Ritalin and controlled substances. So once it goes to a Schedule 2, that's fine, except all these dispensaries now that are dispensing it without the FDA approval, you'll now have to get FDA approval before you can dispense it.
So if someone would want to be an early investor in this industry, how would you even start?
There are a lot of public companies that are in the cannabis space. They're either in the direct marijuana space or they're what we call the ancillary businesses. Here at Cannabis Ross, we represent a number of public companies that are in the industry. And that certainly is an opportunity. A lot of people now are starting to get more interested in the arena, looking at these companies more carefully, and I think you'll see a lot more of these companies mature and grow. So certainly one way is to look at the companies in the public market. Some of the companies also are private, looking to raise money in the private arena. Certainly that's a little bit more difficult. The advantages of being in the public market is you have the SEC requires you to have more disclosure, and as an investor, most people prefer the additional disclosure.
Well, see, it's interesting to me that you can be publicly traded on the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, deal in cannabis, but it's still not a federal law, and you can't accept credit cards and do normal banking.
Well, the funny thing is, if you look at some of these public companies that are listed, and you will see one of the disclosures is that they may lose their banking.
Okay.
And so you have a public company that may have issues with its banking, which is why at the core of it, the most important issue for the industry and frankly the government, the federal government, to get under control is banking. I mean, it's an awkward situation. It's a paradox beyond anyone's realm of comprehension that you can have a legal business in the state, but you can't have it banked. So really it's something that the federal government should be able to at least address the banking considerations, because there's hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue that are coming into these states. Some people think that once the federal government legalizes it, they can balance the budget based upon just that one item. And I think,
is that true?
I mean, it depends upon how you look at the math. I never trust math, but I'll leave that to the mathematicians.
No, last time we talked, you mentioned 2020 you thought might be when we would actually see federal legalization of marijuana. Do you still think that's the case?
I do, and I think what you'll see, you are now seeing people talk about it. You will now seeing it's part of the presidential debate. It's part of the platforms. It's really something that is making its way into the mainstream. And I think in the next, whoever is president in the next presidency, the tipping point will be that, like I said, in the next couple of years, you'll have 35 states. And when you have that many states and you have more than 60% of the people have access to this legal product, probably going up to 65% once California gets online, it's difficult in my mind for the federal government to turn around and still ignore it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Marc, for sharing your thoughts with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.